Today,
Have you
we're going
ever
to
felt
unpack,
that
a
incredible
really
surge of
potent piece
energy
of
when you
wisdom.
start something new?
It's
Oh,
all
absolutely,
about
like
the
a new
incredible
project or
power
maybe
of
a fitness
resilience.
plan.
Exactly.
And
Or
we're
even
drawing
just
it
the big
from
dream you
this,
have. You get this burst,
Japanese
right?
proverb,
Anything feels
fall
possible.
7
Yeah, that
times,
initial
stand
high.
up
But
8.
Right,
then
and it sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't
happens.
it?
It
That
really
energy
does.
just,
But,
it
our
starts
deep
to
dive
fade.
today, I think it's going to show that
Sometimes
there's
slowly,
a
sometimes
lot more
pretty
nuance
fast.
than just bouncing
And
back.
suddenly
Absolutely.
that project
And what's
stalls
really
or the
interesting
gym
is how that
visits get
ancient
less frequent.
idea
Precisely.
It's a
and
very
you're left feeling like,
detailed, kind of
starting
actionable
over again.
framework in our source
It's
material
frustrating,
for
and
today.
honestly,
Which
it
is
feels like
Excerpts from the
wasted potential
Unconquerable Spirit.
sometimes.
It really is a
Rising
common
after
thread every
isn't it?
fall.
We
And
tend
our
to lean
mission
so
really
heavily
is
on
to
that
pull out
feeling
the
of
core
motivation.
insights
We
from
really
this
do.
text.
That
Okay.
initial
Not just,
spark,
how
that
to overcome
inspiration.
adversity in general,
We expect
but the
it to carry
specific,
us.
sometimes
Yeah, but it
surprising
also
ways
doesn't.
that setbacks
And that is
can actually
exactly what
become,
we are diving into
significant
today.
steps
We've
forward.
got some
So
really
let me ask
compelling
this, maybe
excerpts
for you
here
listening
from
right
a
now.
source called
What does it
Discipline,
truly mean to
the
fall?
bridge to your
And
dreams?
maybe more importantly, what does it mean
Interesting
to
title.
stand up?
Right.
Does
And it makes this
standing up
really
just
bold
mean,
claim
try
almost
again?
right off the bat. It says,
Or does
discipline will
this
take you places
unconquerable
motivation
spirit
never
text
could. Suggest
Wow.
something,
Okay,
I
so
don't know,
it's setting
more
up a
deliberate,
direct
a
challenge
strategic
to
kind of
how we usually
re-engagement.
think about getting things
That's
done.
a great question,
It
and
really
it hits
is.
on a
It
crucial
sort of
distinction the
sidelines
source makes.
motivation, or at least puts
It
it in
really
its
emphasizes
place.
positioning
the proverb
discipline as the
isn't,
more reliable engine
about
maybe.
avoiding the
Exactly.
falls at
So
all.
Okay.
our
It's
mission
profoundly
really for this
about
deep
your
dive is
response
to
when
figure
you
out
fall.
why.
The text says something I
Why
find
does
really
this
insightful.
source called
Go on.
discipline?
It says,
your
the true mark of
real
strength isn't in
secret
never
weapon.
falling. It's in
Especially
always
for those
getting
times
back up.
when,
But here's the
inevitably
addition,
that motivational spark
but
just
with refined purpose.
flickers out.
Yeah.
Okay.
We want to explore
Refined
what
purpose, so
discipline
less
really
about
is,
just
according
sheer
to the source.
willpower.
It's not
Exactly.
presented
Less
as
about
this
just
big,
gritting your teeth and
loud
more about a sort of
fanfare.
cognitive
No, it sounds like it's more about
recalibration.
consistency.
Thinking about it
like
the
differently.
quiet thing
So it's
that
not
keeps
just
going.
like
That's the
scrambling
idea.
back to your
The
feet, but
unflashy
maybe
force that
understanding
just
why
shows
you
up
fell in the first place
every
and adjusting
single
your
day.
approach.
Cool. I'm
Because
intrigued.
life, let's be
And
honest,
hopefully
it is
you
going to
listening
knock
will
you
get
down.
some,
Sometimes,
practical
again and
takeaways
again,
from
you
this.
can pretty
That's
much
the
count on
goal.
that.
Insights
Yeah, the
into how
text is
you can
very clear
actually
on that. It
train
says,
yourself to be more
Life will knock
consistent.
you down, and
Sometimes
maybe
more
finally
times than
bridge
you
that
can
gap
count.
between where you
It doesn't
want to be
sugarcoat it.
No kidding.
and it
Well,
acknowledges
actually
that
getting there.
failure, rejection, and
let's jump in.
disappointment
The
are
source
inevitable.
starts
They're
by
just part of the
acknowledging
landscape.
motivation.
Right.
You know,
But what the
motivation
unconquerable
is
spirit really
exciting. We all
highlights
get that
isn't
part.
just your ability
that
to rise
rush,
again,
starting a new
but how
habit,
that act of
chasing
rising
a
changes
goal.
you. It
Even
introduces
seeing an
this
interesting
inspiring
quote
concept
online
of
Totally.
But then it
productive
immediately
failures.
points out the
Productive
problem.
failures.
What
How
happens
does
when
that
that initial
differ
like
from just-
psychological boost starts to wear off?
Well,
the
it
source is pretty
distinguishes
blunt
them
about
from
it. It
simple
says,
errors.
but motivation fades.
Productive failure,
plain and simple,
according to the source,
Yeah.
it calls
is
it
one
like
where you gain
a spark
specific,
useful,
usable,
but temporary.
actionable data.
That's a great
from the
analogy. A
experience.
spark
Okay,
can start
data,
a
so
fire,
it's
but it won't
analytical.
keep
Yes.
it burning.
The book frames
Exactly.
setbacks
Think
not just
about
as
it like
stepping stones, which we
maybe
hear
an
a lot,
adrenaline shot.
but
It
gets
gets
you
you deliberate
going,
learning
like
stations,
sprinting out of the
places
blocks.
you
Okay, yeah.
stop,
But what about
analyze,
mile
and then
5
move on
or
from
mile 20?
smarter. That
Learning
initial
stations,
burst
I
is
like
long
that.
gone
Yeah.
by then.
So every time
That's
you
where
stand
people
back
hit the
up,
wall. You're not just proving
And
you're
this source
resilient.
seems to say that's
You're
because we're
actively
relying on the
generating
wrong
critical
thing.
data about
Motivation
what
is
works,
the
what doesn't,
ignition.
why it
But
didn't
it's
work.
not
it.
the fuel,
Which means that failure
keeps the
isn't the
engine
end
running
point.
for the long haul.
That's
It's
such
just
a clear
incredibly
distinction.
potent
So,
feedback.
okay,
And if you
if
categorize
motivation
that
is just
feedback
this fleeting
correctly,
spark,
the text suggests
what is the engine?
it
What
fuels
keeps us
almost
going when we just
exponential
don't
growth.
feel like
That's
it?
a really fascinating reframe.
the source
Turning
gives a
something
definition
that
that's
feels like an emotional
incredibly direct.
hurdle,
Okay.
failure,
Discipline
into an
is
immediate
doing what
cognitive
needs to be done,
exercise.
even
And
when
you
you
see
don't
this,
feel like
don't
it.
you? When you
Wow.
look at the stories
Simple,
of successful people. I mean, in
but
almost
really
any field.
profound when
Absolutely.
you think
We
about
all
it. It just
hear
cuts
about the
through all
rejections,
emotions,
the
and
failures.
It really
it's
does.
never just
And I
a
think
straight
that's
line
where
to
the
the top
difficulty
for
lies for a
anyone,
lot of
really.
us, right? We're so used to
This
waiting until we
source,
feel
the
like it.
unconquerable spirit,
Waiting
it
for
helps us
inspiration to
pinpoint
strike.
But
what
this source
exactly
flips
made the
that.
difference for them.
It's
Doesn't it? It
saying
wasn't just
action
luck or
comes first,
stubbornness.
or at least action
It
needs to
absolutely
happen.
does,
And the
regardless of the
distinguishing
feeling.
factor,
So
as
it's
the source points out,
redefining our
isn't
whole
merely
relationship with
persistence.
taking
It's not
action.
just
Pretty
keep
much.
going.
Right.
Consistent action,
Systematic,
independent of your mood,
categorization
it's not
and
flashy,
leveraging
it's
of
not
that
loud.
feedback
But
we
it's
talked
there
about.
every
They
day. The
processed
real
each
secret
fall.
weapon, like it
They
says.
identified what
And
the
what I found compelling is
text
how
calls
broad this is.
Reinforcing
It's not
errors
just
like
for
mistakes you keep
work
making versus
projects.
No,
growth
the source
opportunities.
explicitly
Okay, so they learn to
mentions
tell the
getting
difference.
fit,
Right.
Exactly.
building a
And
business.
that allowed them to build this
Even,
robust internal
personal growth,
framework,
mental,
kind of
emotional,
strategy
spiritual
guide
growth.
for
It all
future
comes back
challenges.
to
They weren't just
discipline.
hoping not to
It really
fall
does
again.
seem like the
They were
underlying
preparing for the
thread,
next
doesn't
fall
it?
differently.
The constant
Right,
thing you
right.
need for
So
any
the
kind
empowering
of
message
real
from the source
sustained
isn't just,
progress.
get up,
Which
brush off
naturally
the dust.
brings up the
Though
big
that's
question.
part of it.
Okay,
Sure.
great, but
It's
how do you
more an
build it?
invitation
Yeah,
to
because knowing what
recognize
it is
that
intellectually
you're not
is
starting
one
from
thing.
zero,
But actually
after a
cultivating
struggle.
it day to
Yeah.
day
As
is
the book
something
powerfully
else
puts
entirely.
it, you're not starting from
Especially
scratch.
when things
You're
get tough.
starting
Does
from
the source give us
experience-honed
practical steps?
strategy.
How do we
Experience
actually
honed
train
strategy.
ourselves?
That
Because it does
really
use that word
lands.
Doesn't it?
train.
And this
It
whole
does. It
deep
says
dive
you can
into that
train
simple
yourself to
quote,
stay consistent,
fall 7 times,
especially when
stand
it's
up
boring,
8,
hard, or
it
lonely.
really brings
which are
home
exactly
the final
the
statement
times
from the source
motivation
material.
decides
Which
to
is
take a vacation.
Resilience
Precisely.
isn't just a
So it's
trait,
not about
it's a
finding a magical
cultivated
feeling. It's
capacity.
about
building a
something you build.
capability,
A cultivated
like a muscle.
capacity.
Okay,
so
how?
wrapping this
What
up,
are the
the
exercises
big
for
takeaway
this
seems to be
discipline
that
muscle?
falling
This is
isn't
where it
just
gets
normal.
really practical.
It's actually a
It
source
doesn't
of
just leave you with
incredibly
the concept.
valuable feedback.
It points towards tiny
raw
systems.
data.
Tiny
results.
systems.
Yeah.
Like what?
Getting back
Things
up
like,
isn't just about being tough or
establishing morning
persistent.
routines,
It's about
doing
actively
goal
building
journaling,
a
maybe
more
even digital
refined,
detoxing.
okay,
so not
experience-honed
huge,
strategy
overwhelming
for whatever
changes.
comes next.
Small, repeatable
That sums it up
actions.
perfectly. And that, I think,
Exactly. Things that
raises
lower
a
the
really
barrier to entry,
important, maybe
reduce
provocative
the
thought
friction
for you
of
to carry
just getting
forward after
started.
this deep
It's
dive.
less about
Okay, leave
psyching
us with
yourself
something
up
to think
for a
about.
marathon.
Well, if this
And more about
source,
just
the
putting your running
unconquerable
shoes on, that
spirit,
first
teaches
small
us that
step.
every
Right.
single
It seems
fall is
almost
actually
too
a
simple,
lesson in
maybe.
strategic
But
adaptation,
think about how often we get
then what
paralyzed by the
precise
sheer
growth
size of a
opportunity,
goal.
Oh,
what
definitely.
specific
So how do
piece
these
of
tiny
actionable data
systems
are you
actually
currently uncovering in your own life right
build
now?
the bigger muscle
Even
of
if,
discipline?
or
What's
maybe
the
especially
connection?
if, just feels like a
This is the
setback.
deeper insight, I think. These small, consistent actions feed into something internal.